Hey there and welcome to the Utility Sports channel. Today we are going to be doing an NBA mock draft here for the 2020 NBA draft. We are going to be sticking just to the lottery here, and we are doing the set order without trades in this mock draft. So let's jump right into it here with number one, the Minnesota Timberwolves, obviously jumping up to the number one spot via the lottery. They've got a dynamic core in D'Angelo Russell and Karl-Anthony Towns offensively. A lot of good offensive potential there between the two of them in the pick and roll. Obviously, some questions with Ryan Saunders and his motion offense, whether or not the two of them really fit the best there and what to do with this top spot to kind of fit the roster and to really start building a winning team. They've got a lot of questions on the defensive end of the floor, as I kind of mentioned, their offensive success. Defensively, Karl-Anthony Towns really struggles in the pick and roll game. D'Angelo Russell also is a struggling defender out on the perimeter. Josh Okogie's really been tasked to do a lot defensively for them, but he kind of hinders what they can do offensively as he's not a consistent shooter, and he's kind of lacks being able to create off the dribble for himself at all, and really puts a lot of pressure back on D'Lo and Karl-Anthony Towns. Also, Malik Beasley is facing drug charges currently, possession of drug charges, and he's a question mark what his market will kind of look like, because he was playing very well, almost scoring 20 points a game, I believe, in his 18 games with the Timberwolves since getting traded there before the season got shut down. At one, the Wolves, there's a couple options they could obviously consider. Obviously, many consider LaMelo Ball and Anthony Edwards to be the two top prospects in this class based off potential. I don't see it quite that way. I think there is one other guy that has potential above those. But for mock draft, this is what I believe the GMs will do ultimately. And I think the Minnesota Timberwolves will go and take LaMelo Ball. Let's see if this will load here for us. Okay, great. Here we are. We're on the clock now with the Timberwolves. We can see their depth chart here. Obviously, this isn't quite right because D'Lo is the starting point guard, but they will go LaMelo. He's got good size, 6'7", 6'8". He's going to be a really, really talented playmaker in the NBA. He sees passes before they're there. He throws people open. He's going to create a lot of shots for a team. And obviously there's questions about his own consistency as a scorer. But with the framework of Karl-Anthony Towns and D'Angelo Russell, he's not going to be relied on to score the ball consistently early on in his career. And he has a lot of room to grow as a defender. I don't think that this is a win-now move for the Timberwolves. I think this is more of a selling tickets and long-term, try and hit for potential type move. And I think LaMelo Ball is very, very enticing to a lot of GMs out there with his 6'7" frame, good wingspan, and playmaking ability. Moving on to two here, very an interesting year. As a team we had seen in the finals for 5 straight seasons in the Golden State Warriors, found themselves with the second overall pick, had the best odds to get the first overall pick in the NBA draft, but fell down to 2 with the Wolves jumping ahead of them. Here, obviously the Warriors, many consider their biggest need to be center, which I could definitely see. I also think that they need a playmaker, a secondary guy to really create for them when Steph Curry's not in the game. And I think that guy will be Deni Avdija out of Maccabi Tel Aviv. And his time in Israel, he was a little up and down with Maccabi Tel Aviv, obviously a higher level of professional game. But based on what many saw in the FIBA Under-20 European Championship, in which he took in the MVP in that run for his team, he really solidified himself as probably a top 5 or 6 pick likely in this draft, almost a lock for that. And to me, Avdija is the best player in the class. I think his floor is higher than a lot of the other guys, and I also think that his ceiling, with his size and his athleticism, somewhat deceptive athleticism, but he's athletic nonetheless. And I think he can really grow into a good shooter. He's got a good stroke, stays consistent with his base and his release, something that LaMelo Ball does not do. And I think Avdija will be the best player in this class. And I think he's going to land with the Golden State Warriors. I think he kind of fits into molding what they want to continue their franchise to be past Curry and Clay. And I think he can also come in and help them right now, coming off the bench, likely behind Wiggins at the start of his career. Now, Charlotte here at pick 3, this is kind of an interesting situation here. They've got a lot of strong guard play already. Edwards is a versatile wing, could play the 2 or the 3 at the NBA level. He's got good size, good frame. But I do think that they are going to go James Wiseman here. I think He's kind of a big question mark in this draft. Obviously, only playing 3 games at Memphis. Not sure what you're going to get out of him, but his 7'6" wingspan, 9'6" standing reach are 2 things that GMs are going to love seeing. He's got great athleticism, really good north and south in the pick and roll game offensively. Good mobility, can get out in transition and move. He's got a lot of offensive potential, and I think somewhere like Charlotte would be good for his development because they're going to try and utilize him out of the post, and they're really going to try and build around him. And I think his potential as a rim protector is extremely high. I think he's got some shades of Rudy Gobert to him on the defensive end. Doesn't really move that great out in space. That's true for most centers in the NBA, especially with guards. But comparatively around the rim, he's got, great length and good athleticism. I think he's going to be a force around the rim defensively. And I think that's what Charlotte really needs. And I think that's ultimately what they're going to value. Here at pick number 4 now, the Chicago Bulls are in a very interesting spot. They obviously get to take a shot at one of the guys that many believe to be possibly the best player in the class, in Anthony Edwards, and they're getting him here at 4 in this mock draft. A big thing for them here would be, not only just looking at what they have on the roster, but he does fit what they have. They need to get a wing past Otto Porter, obviously in the last year of his deal, and been a little inconsistent with them. Obviously, Zach LaVine is their go-to player at this point, and I think Edwards fits next to him well. I think Edwards can bring a little bit of a defensive presence moving forward. He showed some inconsistencies at Georgia in that department, but also the talent offensively is not questionable. He's got, a lot of skill set. I think if he can get his shot selection under control a little bit, move away from the three-pointer and really kind of play that DeMar DeRozan role, which is what I think he's best fit for, we could see him making multiple All-Star games in the East, and I think this is a home run pick for the Chicago Bulls here if he were to fall to this point. Now at number 5, this is kind of where the draft really opens up in my eyes after the top 4 go, LaMelo, Avdija, Wiseman, and Edwards. Now we got Cleveland, obviously a team that's used their last 2 first-round picks on guards and Colin Sexton and Darius Garland. It's an interesting spot for them to be at here. They also went out and acquired Drummond at the last trade deadline. They do have Kevin Love under contract, and Tristan Thompson is an unrestricted free agent this year. So obviously the best fit for them would be a small forward based on what their roster is. But when you're picking top 5, you shouldn't be considering exactly what your roster is right now. But you should be trying to get good players that are going to help you win and probably help you turn around the franchise. And I think that starts here with sophomore out of Dayton, Obi Toppin, taking a kid out of Ohio, showed a lot of offensive skill set in his time at Dayton. And really, really grew as a basketball player between his freshman and sophomore year as a Dayton Flyer. He upped his points per game up to 20 points per game, averaged around 7 rebounds. And I mean, if you watch this guy's tape, he is an athletic freak. I highly recommend after our video is done here to go check him out. He pulled off some dunks that, would be comparable to what Zion Williamson was doing in his year at Duke. Now, obviously, I don't think he's going to be quite what Zion Williamson is as a player. He is already 22 years old. So his potential isn't, through the roof like Zion's was as a 19-year-old coming out of Duke. But I think Obi Toppin's a really good player. I think he's got a lot of offensive upside to him. He can really stretch the floor. He's going to be able to screen and roll. I think he can fit as a small ball center and also as a kind of a big 4. He doesn't move out well in space. That is probably the biggest knock on him is defensively. He struggles against the pick and roll and against other perimeter players. So you'll have to be a little careful with his matchup. And I don't love the fit necessarily with the Cavs right away with Love and Drummond and possibly Tristan Thompson coming back. But at the same time, I think that the Cavs should be looking for long-term impact, and I think Obi Toppin could really do that while staying in Ohio. Moving on to number 6 here, I think this is one of the most likely picks in the draft, actually, to for sure occur. I absolutely love this selection here if this is indeed the way the Atlanta Hawks go, and it is sticking here with Isaac Okoro out of Auburn. Auburn University is only 90 miles away from the Atlanta metropolitan area. Isaac Okoro is a really defensive-minded player who's shown a lot of growth coming out from high school into his freshman year of college. Ended up going from what I believe was a 33rd ranked prospect in his recruiting class to now likely being a top 6 or 7 pick in the NBA draft. He's got great athletic upside. Another guy that you should really throw on the tape on after this video. he jumps out of the gym. Defensively, he can make up a lot of space, and he's going to be one of those guys that can go out and take a guy out in space. Out at half court, he'll be comfortable checking. He'll be able to defend in the full court. And I think he's kind of the Swiss Army knife defensively that the Hawks are going to need to pair Trae Young with ultimately. There's also a lot of rumors about Tyrese Haliburton at this spot, which I also would like. I think Haliburton could play off ball very well next to Trae Young offensively and could kind of fill a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander role. But I think for the Hawks and for the betterment of their team, grabbing a defensive-minded wing here with slashing potential in Isaac Okoro would really complement Trae Young well, and also really, would fit next to the acquisition of Clint Capella, really improving their defense holistically while having John Collins and Trae Young do a lot of the offensive scoring and carrying that team. So Isaac Okoro will be the pick here at 6. Let's see, did it draft? There we go. Okay, great. Now at pick 7, the Detroit Pistons are up, and a player that I had just mentioned, Tyrese Haliburton, will be the pick here for the Pistons. A lot of question marks on this team. Obviously, they got Derrick Rose and Luke Kennard, but I think Haliburton, as a sophomore at Iowa State, really kind of showed some of his ability, really can stretch the floor well despite an unorthodox jump shot. Haliburton, he's got a lot of offensive upside. He can really function as a good playmaker. You saw him averaging almost 7 assists a game in his sophomore season at Iowa State, and really just improved all around. He's got great wingspan, really good length to play the point guard spot. He's 6'5" or 6'6" at point guard. Can play the 2 like I had mentioned earlier. And I think that his potential, I think this is actually a pretty strong class in terms of the overall depth. Obviously, I don't think that there's that true, for sure superstar, kind of like we got spoiled with last year in Ja and Zion. But I think that this class has a lot of NBA-ready contributors that'll come in and, could grow into potential all-stars or, at least, high-level starters in a lot of situations. And I think Haliburton would be kind of that corner piece for the Pistons, kind of turning things around, potentially moving on from Blake Griffin if they could find a suitor for cheap, or, definitely moving on from Derrick Rose. I think that's for sure in the cards. And I think even Luke Kennard will be on the trade block this year. And I think Haliburton will be one of those guys to pair with Sakuda and Boy. You got kind of positionless length and size, good athleticism, and Haliburton brings, unique shooting ability at his size. So I think that this really makes a lot of sense for the Detroit Pistons. Now here at pick 8, we have the New York Knicks. In our last mock, the full first round mock, we had them taking Cole Anthony. Obviously, Cole Anthony's not been mocked in a lot of top 10s based on some of his inconsistencies. However, there is a chance that with his marketability and with LaMelo Ball off the board, that the Knicks could pull the trigger on something like this, especially if they found a CP3 trade unlikely. However, at this point, we do have a player on the board that we did not have last time, and that is Killian Hayes, the 6'5" guard from Germany. He's got, some unique shot creating ability, can create space out on the perimeter. He's a quality playmaker. I think that's probably his strongest aspect, honestly, coming in. I don't love Killian Hayes myself as a prospect. I think that he's, kind of a pick based off of potential more than what we've really seen at this point. He's really struggled as an actual shooter, shooting below 30% in his career overseas. But I think that, GMs will see some of the size at 6'5" and some of the potential skill set there and roll the dice on him. And I think the Knicks here at 8 will do that, trying to get their franchise point guard. Moving on to number 9 here, the Wizards. I've almost been trying to not mock this because of how often I've mocked it in the past, but I think Onyeka Okongwu will be the selection here if we can find him. I think he's under the forward spot, so let's pull him up. Forwards. And Okongwu, I really like Okongwu as a player. I think he's got some real face-up potential in the low post area. He kind of reminds me of Montrezl Harrell a little bit, which, as we've seen, is a very, very quality player as he won Sixth Man of the Year this year. But I think he's got, stronger rim protection presence. I think he's a little bit bigger, a little bit more stout. I think he's a better rebounder than Trez is. He's not quite the, the ball handler playmaker yet, but I think he's got, the skills to grow into that. Good, quick first step for a big man. And I think he'll be able to move out in space defensively better than most bigs are in the NBA. And I absolutely love this pick for Washington. You get a real screen and roll guy with John Wall coming back in to complement Bradley Beal. And, they got some young wings there too. I think Washington could maybe vie for an 8 seed potentially after bringing in Okongwu. I like what they have. It'll be tough for them to jump a team like Orlando if they keep all their pieces together. But I love the Okongwu fit, and I do ultimately think he will be a Washington Wizard. Moving on here to the Phoenix Suns at 10. The Suns have a lot of, momentum to build off of. Went 8-0 in the bubble. A lot of people see them as a playoff team next year. I'm not quite as sold on that. Ricky Rubio and Devin Booker played very, very well in the bubble. Aaron Baines was good for them, and I think that'll be a key piece that they want to, keep around to complement DeAndre Ayton as the backup center. Obviously, Ayton as the starter. And Ayton's got a lot of offensive, potential too. I think that they need to improve defensively, but I also think that their main goal here in this draft will be getting, another scorer to play next to Booker to take a little bit of that offensive pressure off of him. And there is one guy out of Alabama here that I think is very, very likely to be the selection here. Kyra Lewis, Jr., if I could find him, there he is. Averaged 18.5, 5 and 5. He's got a really well-rounded game. He's a little bit, he reminds me a lot of Colin Sexton, who came out of Alabama. Not as much of a scoring threat necessarily, and a little bit less of worse of a shooter. But I think his playmaking talent is far superior to Sexton, and I think that he could really fit well next to Devin Booker. And I think he gives the Suns a 1-2 punch that they're going to want to try and build around for years to come, especially with Ricky Rubio, I don't think being really a long-term option, but more of a short-term guy. And I think Kyra Lewis coming off the bench early in his career would be good for him. And I mean, if you guys haven't watched this guy, he's going to be probably the fastest player with the ball in his hands in the draft class. North-South, he really gets moving. And I think that he gives the Suns an interesting outlook to put with a half-court player like Devin Booker to give them a transition threat like Kyra Lewis, and a guy who can also manipulate the pick and roll and really, run the offense when Devin Booker is not on the floor. Moving on here to pick number 11, the San Antonio Spurs. First time in the lottery for over 2 decades now at this point. So it's kind of a weird territory for them to be in. But I think that they're going to go out and get their two-way shot-creating wing that they've been missing since Kawhi Leonard left. And that player is Devin Vasel out of Florida State. Vasel's got really good size, really good athleticism. As a wing, he was blocking nearly a shot a game, I believe, for Florida State. And the defensive potential is there for sure. I think he's got a lot of the tools that you need to be a perennial all-NBA or all-defense type player. A few years into his career, he's got really great length. He can get down in his stance, really moves his feet well, and he'll be able to cover out in space, which is something you obviously really, really need at that point. Let's mock Vasel here to them. There was a video that came out of him with an altered jump shot. I did not love that. I thought his jump shot was really, good as was. But I'm assuming that the Spurs, who historically have done a really good job, improving players' jump shots, were a big, part of what helped Kawhi become the player we know of him as, know Kawhi as today. And I think that Vasel would be a great landing spot for the Spurs. I think he complements their 2 young guards in Lonnie Walker and DeJounte Murray really well, and also Derek White. And I think that that's a home run pick for the Spurs here at 11. Pick number 12, the Kings are an interesting team. Obviously, Buddy Hield could be on his way out. Bogdan Bogdanovic is a free agent this year. I do think he will find his way back to the Sacramento Kings, though. Harrison Barnes is locked up for, I believe, 3 more years. And Marvin Bagley and Rashawn Holmes are the 2 big men there. So they're kind of log-jammed with, solid players. Obviously, De'Aaron Fox is a very good player. But around De'Aaron, they don't really have a ton right now. And I think they're going to go for a very high upside pick, and I think that's Patrick Williams out of Florida State. So we have the 2 Seminoles going back to back here. Patrick Williams functioned as a 6-man, was the ACC 6-man of the year for the Florida State Seminoles, and defensively he's got a lot of upside. I see him more as a NBA 4 than a shooting guard, honestly, even though they have him listed as a shooting guard here. I don't think he's really extremely skilled. I think he's kind of reliant on jumping off of 2 feet around the rim offensively. But athletically, defensively, he can move his feet. He goes out in space well. He's a predictive defender. He knows really how to succeed as a team defender. First, he makes the right rotations, and then out in space, like I had mentioned, he's got the tools that you need to really, stick with what you need to be doing. And Florida State's really becoming a defensive stopper university. Obviously, they produced Jonathan Isaac, who's been a beast defensively since coming into the league, obviously with a torn ACL right now, so he will be out next year. But then also Vasel and Patrick Williams, I believe, have high defensive potential. So a lot of credit to their coaching staff there for like, developing pro-ready defenders who are going to come in and be stoppers on that end. And I think Vasel going at 11 had a lot of offensive potential. I think Patrick Williams has a little bit less. But the athleticism is undeniable, and the defensive upside is definitely there. And I think that's why the Sacramento Kings run this pick here at 12. Now, number 13 is another one of those spots here where the Pelicans kind of have a logjam. Obviously, a lot of young players came over in that Lakers trade, sending Anthony Davis over to Los Angeles. You got Lonzo Ball at the 1 with Frank Jackson as his backup. You've got at the 2, JJ Redick will be around for another year, and you've got Drew Holiday, obviously, as a starting guard for them. And also you have Josh Hart coming off the bench. I think that Drew Holiday will be a trade candidate this offseason. But it's kind of hard to, really project if he does get moved. And then at the forward spots, you obviously got Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson. And Derek Favors is an unrestricted free agent, so he could potentially be on his way out. But I do believe that they're going to try and go small here and stick on the wings. Rather than going big man, because I think that they like seeing Zion kind of have that opening and that open space. I think Nico Melli will kind of end up getting a lot of those big man minutes next to Zion Williamson in an unconventional lineup just to have the shooting. And I think here that means that they will go Tyrese Maxey out of Kentucky. Obviously, a lot of mocks have him potentially going outside the lottery. And I do see that as a possibility for Maxey. He was very inconsistent at Kentucky, but some of the Kentucky runs we've seen in the playoffs lately, like Tyler Hero, who had some of the similar knocks as Maxey, that landed him at pick 13, and Bam Adebayo out of Kentucky, who went pick 13. It's kind of the Kentucky thing to go 13th overall, and I think Tyrese Maxey, has good combo guard potential. Could come in. Reminds me a little bit of Karis LeVert as a scorer. He's creative as a scorer on the rim. He's got some shooting touch, probably prefers to be in the mid-range area rather than the three-point game at this point. But he does have, the potential to grow into something, somewhat of a three-point shooting threat. And I think here the Pelicans will take him not only to protect themselves in case Lonzo Ball and them cannot come to an agreement on an extension, but also just because JJ Redick's getting older, Drew Holiday is a possible trade candidate. And I think Tyrese Maxey could fill their backcourt in a variety of ways. And I see that as the pick here. Now, with the last pick of our lottery, we have the Boston Celtics, obviously, with Kemba Walker, Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Gordon Hayward, and Daniel Tice kind of as their big 6 guys that they have. And there's a lot of question marks at the center spot. I do ultimately think that Daniel Tice is the guy that they like to play their center spot, use him as a screener and a handoff guy up high, and have their guards kind of play off of him. And I think that the rich are going to get richer here in terms of guard play. And they're going to end up going with, let me pull him up here, Tyrell Terry. Can we find Tyrell Terry? There he is, out of Stanford, Tyrell Terry. And I absolutely love this pick for the Boston Celtics. This kid's a shooter. He's got a lot of shooting potential. He can run in and out of screens. Catch and shoot. He can shoot off the dribble, out of the pick and roll, and just out of self-creation. And he's a threat to be a 3-level scorer. He's got a good little flip shot around the rim. And offensively, I think his potential is actually very high. As a Mavericks fan, I'm hoping that he falls to 18. He's the guy I want to pair with Luka Doncic in the backcourt for years to come. He's got a little bit of Trae Young to him. Now, he's not going to be Trae Young, obviously. He's going to pick 14 here for a reason. But just the threat he is as a three-point shooter, can really spray it from downtown, and that's something that you need in this league. He can, get shots off with very little space. And I think that this would be a home run pick here for the Boston Celtics. Even though they're, very deep at the guard position, I think getting another guy to come off the bench and score. And just imagine this, Marcus Smart and Tyrell Terry come off the bench. Some of Terry's shortcomings are on the defensive end, and you've got Marcus Smart, who is a perennial All-NBA defender. And I think that the two of them would really pair well in the same backcourt. And I think that Tyrell Terry Also gives the Celtics some, added insurance behind Kemba Walker in case injury. Injuries persist moving forward in Kemba's career. Obviously, they're so deep on the wing, and I think that they're just going to roll it over with Daniel Tice. And I think potentially later in the draft at 26 or 30, they could take a long-term building project at center. But so much of Brad Stevens' offense comes from the perimeter play, and I think that they're going to try and get one more, weapon in that area. So Tyrell Terry will be the last pick here of the lottery. And here are the results. We'll go over it one more time. LaMelo Ball went first overall in this mock to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Deni Avdija from Maccabi Tel Aviv goes to the Golden State Warriors. Gives them a lot of playmaking potential there. James Wiseman fills the hole for the Hornets at center, replacing Zeller, and kind of giving that building block in the middle to move forward. Anthony Edwards is a steal here for the Chicago Bulls at 4. Absolutely love this pick for them if this were to be how it goes. Obviously, this is hinging on the Warriors really liking Avdija. Potentially, the Warriors could go Wiseman here, and that would throw a little bit of a wrinkle into things here for the Bulls. But Avdija at 2 is very likely, and Edwards falling to 4 would be likely the result at that point. Obi Toppin to 5, like I had mentioned, good offensive upside, like that long-term fit next to Sexton and Garland. Ocoro is a home run pick here for the Hawks. It fits really, really great and is a dynamic slasher next to Trae Young offensively. And, he'll really, value taking the best man on the opposing team out on the perimeter night after night. Haliburton's a rebuilding piece there for the Pistons, gives them a guy to put the ball in his hands and gives them flexibility in their roster moving forward because of his ability to play off the ball, guard multiple positions 1 through 3. And I really like that pick for Detroit. In the second half of the lottery here, Killian Hayes at the Knicks, a pick based off potential and selling tickets. Hayes is a high curious pick here. Would be interesting to see how, a spot for him would open up in New York if he does fall to 8. Onyeka Okongwu, like I mentioned, love that pick at 9. Kyra Lewis going 10 to the Phoenix Suns. It gives them a dynamic scorer and playmaker next to Devin Booker in the backcourt. Vasel is that new building block wing for the San Antonio Spurs franchise, and I think they'll get a lot out of him. Patrick Williams at 12, don't absolutely love the fit there, but I think he's a potential a guy that some could view as a potential all-star with his athleticism and some of the skill set he's shown as a spot-up shooter and an athletic freak. Tyrese Maxey at 13 is that combo guard that the Pelicans could get for insurance based on if they want to make a couple moves there with David Griffin running the show. And the rich get richer at 14 with Tyrell Terry going to the Boston Celtics, giving them another weapon in that backcourt and off the bench. I really love that mock there for them. Let us know down in the comments below what you think, if this is plausible or not. Let us know who your favorite team is and who you want them to draft, as well as who you think they will draft. Thanks for watching, guys, and make sure to check out some of our other videos.